is the latest film from director Joseph Kahn. It stars Brandon Routh, Mina Suvari, Melina Polly Wiseman. This movie features Brandon Routh as the character Hank, who used to be a very popular top-of-the-top high school quarterback. Unfortunately, due to an injury and some increasing alcoholism, being broken up by someone he thought was the one, he went down a really dark path. He sought help, and now he's the local high school science teacher. Meanwhile, while that personal drama is going on, the background of this film, in this town, around the world, there's this thing called the ICK. Nobody knows what it's doing, just that it has grown on Earth. No one knows how it arrived. It grows a little bit, people notice it a bit more, but it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't really inconvenience anybody, so nobody pays any mind to it. They just keep on living until one night when things really get kicking off. And now Hank is caught up in the situation. It starts affecting his life even more, and maybe he could be a hero. I didn't know anything about this movie until I saw the Fathom event promo before some other film that I was seeing. I saw that they were promoting like the songs that were going to be in this film. They had a title card at the end of the Fathom thing that had all of the bands. It was a lot of pop punk, like emo rock kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, I like some of these bands. Like, I'm not gonna act like, you know, I'm an expert on the genre or anything like that, you know, but I have heard some of these, you know, bands before. I am familiar with some of their songs, so I was kind of like, okay, and the premise looks really fun. It looks exactly like my kind of shit. I love, like, small town, sci-fi, horror stuff happening, and pair it up with, like, one of my favorite kind of character tropes in the lead where, you know, they feel like their best life is now beyond them, and they're like, what do I do? Did I waste potential? What am I supposed to be? I went into this already thinking that the plot potential was there, and it was exactly my kind of shit that I was walking into. That's definitely the best part of the film for me, is that there is like a big level of creativity involved here. And there's also like some good ideas as far as like horror sequences and how they integrate the ick when it becomes more mobile, and, you know, how it gets to people, infects people. There's a lot of really fun ideas here and some good design work at play. I'm not familiar with Joseph Kahn's filmography. I know he's directed a lot of music videos, but he has directed some feature films like Bodied, Detention, and Torque, films I have not seen. I didn't get a chance to see him before I saw this. I was curious though, and I also found out that he was the director behind that like R-rated short film for Power Rangers, and I remember, you know, whenever I watched that short film, liking it back then. So I did go into this with some expectation of like, okay, I had no idea this movie existed until a little bit ago, but it does seem like something I could really enjoy, and this guy does show some promise as a filmmaker. And when the movie first starts up and Swing Swing starts playing, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a fucking awesome song. It starts off with a montage of Brandon Routh back in high school. You know, they're chronicling, you know, how he got to this point in the present day of the movie. And I was like, I was all in. Swing Swing is playing, and it's like kind of quick kind of montage stuff, like very snappy kind of filmmaking and editing stuff that I was really impressed with at first. And, you know, I was like, okay, this is what I'm here for. This is gonna be awesome. And then the song Swing Swing kind of stops, and then they start playing The Reason by Hoobastank, and I was like, oh, okay, kind of abrupt. I thought they were going to use the one song for at least the majority of it, or they would switch closer to the end of the montage or something like that. They switched to The Reason by Hoobastank, which is another great song, and I was like, okay, well, let's see how they use this. And then after a couple seconds of that, they stopped playing that song, and I can't even say they aligned that with any scene that, you know, made it feel, you know, resonating. They switched to another song, and I was like, oh no. Throughout the rest of the film, despite the fact that, you know, they're promoting the music, I mean, it's all there. It's just, maybe like one scene or two, they like actually pair up some songs that kind of match the scene. A lot of it just feels like, well, we have like an open space here, let's just put one of these songs in. And I can't say that any of it felt very satisfying, other than the brief kind of like, oh, I know that one. There's also like, when they're not doing that, they do like movie score, and I want to say the last third of this movie is when they abandon the soundtrack thing entirely and just do original score. And it's not that it's bad, it's just that it is very generic, and especially early on when they're like doing high school stuff and like just, you know, comedic everyday life things, it has like this sitcom-y, just, you know, too comedic kind of vibe to it, and I was like, ooh, you know, like that, it kind of clashes with the tone that I feel like this story should be having in a weird way. And I mentioned before, like, I was impressed with the montage in the beginning. You know, they lay a clear picture of Hank as a character, great introduction to him and his story. But once we exit the montage, we're now in present day with Hank. It's like, it still has this kind of like short attention span inspired kind of editing where things are cut a little too quick, and it also starts to like undercut some jokes as well because they just keep moving so quickly. You know, they're not using the comedic language in editing to their advantage. So despite the fact that there are some good like satirical like comedic ideas in here, like there are definitely some chuckle-worthy moments, there's definitely a clear attempt to satirize how certain people reacted to, you know, when COVID was on the rise, and there's even lines of dialogue in this where people are saying like, you need to stay inside, just don't let it infect you, and people are like, what do you mean, man? You know, some characters that represent like the deep state truthers and like people just going like, I just want to live, we just want to get back to normal. So there's definitely a clear attempt to satirize that, which is actually really fun because I thought this was just going to be like a one night kind of adventure, but the fact that, you know, the ick starts, you know, attacking more, and it takes place over the course of a couple days because some people are just like, oh, I don't know, not bothering me. So I did like that attempt, but like I said, it's just the execution of, you know, how they edit some of these scenes together. You know, some of the punchlines started to not work. I think some moments of performance actually start to not really work for some of the actors. I don't think they had a good, strong, you know, handle on how to direct these comedic moments in some parts as well. There's an interesting idea for a character who is basically a version of Austin Abrams' character from Do Revenge, good movie by the way, where it's a guy who's like kind of weaponizing like woke kind of like language and trying to make that their entire personality, but really underneath there's some sinister things because of course, you know, they're a man that, you know, knows how to like get away, you know, with some shady shit now that he knows how to play that system, you know. There's an interesting idea there, but I can't say that the characters, I think it's more so just how they directed it. Like it's a bit too on the nose as far as like how they approach that performance. Brandon Routh is consistently pretty good in this. He has that like kind of very corny, like kind of like comedic sensibility to him. Like there's some crazy shit happening in front of him at one point. And at one point he's just like, nope, not for me. I'm gonna skedaddle, something like that. And it's like, he is very consistent with his line delivery and just his manner. And it doesn't portray like his, you know, performance as the character or, you know, his dedication to, you know, telling the story through the character. So I think he was really good. The character Grace, who he spends the most time with for reasons I won't spoil, she and him had really good chemistry with each other, and I like that idea that they present. Mina Suvari as his ex high school sweetheart, who is still in the town, so they, you know, bump into each other sometime. You know, I like that dynamic. I like that story there. You know, I think it's a good pairing with everything going on. Like I said, you know, going into this movie, I thought this is my shit. It has a lot of elements that I really like here. I think a lot of the supporting players don't get much play, which is fine because some of it is just like you're setting up like a joke kill, like a more comedic one. But then there's these two characters that kind of linger with Brandon Routh and character Grace for the last third, and I'm like, was I supposed to care about either of you? And, you know, they try to build up like a relationship thing with those two characters, and I'm like, why do I care? Like, just throwing these characters at me, and I don't know why I need to care about them. We're not spending a lot of time with them when they're here anyways. Like, they're just extra people. We don't need that. I think this is something you could have cut, or you could have potentially tried to make stronger. There are certain ways that scenes flow to the next scene where I'm like, you know, character-wise, I can see it happening, but I want to, like, feel it in the moment, and it feels very abrupt, you know? Like, there are just certain things that characters do next where I'm like, I just feel like I need to see a bit more of that, you know, progression. And the way they did it here, it just felt very alienating. Just like, oh, we're showing you another scene instead of like, we're taking you through it. You know what I mean? There's some staging in some of like the horror sequences, even though there's some good ideas like how to do like some car chases, or like you're getting cornered in a house and you're running out of space. How do we defeat this thing? You know, stuff like that is really cool. How the ick like moves and infects people. Like I said, like the ideas for how to pull off the visuals, you know, there's some good ideas there, you know, whether the visual effects completely hold up or not, which is another issue, unfortunately, is that they don't always do. But there are some ways that they stage some of these sequences where I'm like, or it's either staging or just the way they've shot it, like it's almost too dark, and I'm like, okay, I literally can't even tell what happened with a certain sequence where, you know, Hank is trapped in a cop car at one point, where I'm like, how exactly did he, whatever, it's still moving, you know. So there's a couple points like that where I was like, yeah, it just does not have a great flow of events. Like, certain things feel a little choppy, whether it's how they filmed it on the day or how they wrote it into the movie or how they edited it later. Even when the ick finally starts to like do stuff in the first act, like the first act kickoff, even that kind of feels very abrupt. Like, it just kind of starts happening. And I'm thinking of like in another movie, they would have had a scene where you're focusing on a supporting player, someone who's in the background before or whatever, and then they do a horror scene where it's like, oh, the ick is moving. Oh, this is the first victim, and then it starts to spread a little bit more, and then you get your main people involved. In this one, they just kind of jump right into, you know, it's already kind of grown, and Hank is now, it just feels very thrown at you. So I walked into this movie, you know, not knowing anything about it, you know, about like a month ago, but kind of having some high expectations just based off of I love these kind of movies, and I was excited to see how they could utilize the soundtrack. I wanted to see Brandon Routh in a good role, and he is good in this. There are some good performances, as I mentioned. I just don't think the execution for the storytelling and even certain aspects of the filmmaking were all that there. And yeah, like the music, man, like I'm looking for that Edgar Wright, like James Gunn thing of like, you can take these songs and pair them up with these visuals and it matches and it's fun, it's great, or it makes the emotions like just more felt by you, the audience. And I don't think that's what it's just a lot of, we just have the song, we can play it, you know? And I was a little disappointed by that. And yeah, speaking of Edgar Wright, I know Brandon Routh had worked with him before on Scott Pilgrim, so maybe the comparison seems a little weird, but it does feel like they want to capture an Edgar Wright kind of feel almost with some of the ways they're trying to do the, you know, jokes and the fast editing and, you know, camera movements. And outside of the opening montage, I don't think it was, you know, 100% throughout the rest of the film. I'm gonna give Ick a C-. I really did wish I liked this better. It does have some admirable things. Some actors do show up to try to sell you on the moment, sell you on the character, sell you on the joke. I just wish that it was a little bit more consistent. I wish that, you know, I cared about the characters, especially when you get to the end and there's just two people where I'm like, I don't, but you keep showing me them, but you show me the wrong things because I don't care about these characters. You show me the wrong scenes, the wrong beats or something like that. And I just wish that, I don't know if it's like a post-production thing where they're purely just like, I think we need to edit it this way, or maybe that this was the plan the entire time to have it edited this specific way, but it does feel like a movie where you just need to like, you know, hone in a bit more on like, you know, letting moments breathe, because that's when things feel creepy, you know, feel things creeping up on you when a camera just is still for a bit and you just let a scene breathe and play out, you know what I mean? Like that's what I love about these kind of stories too, small town, and then just a creature feature happens to them. And if that was the goal, I can't say that they 100% pulled that off with this. But if you've seen Ick, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.